17 years old. GOP members of Tennessee's congressional delegation, including Senators Marsha Blackburn and Bill Hagerty, as well as House Homeland Security Committee Chairman Mark Green, say Camilo Hurtado Campos was in the country illegally for over 2 decades. The lawmakers are now demanding answers from the Department of Homeland Security about how he was able to stay despite having a criminal record, as well as if DHS was aware of his record. Fox News has reached out to DHS for comment. On Capitol Hill, Ryan Schmelz, Fox News.
Former New Hampshire state lawmaker and the one-time partner of a woman charged with taking sexually explicit photos of children at a Massachusetts daycare where she worked has also been charged in the case. Stacey Marie Lawton is charged with aiding and abetting the sexual exploitation of children. Americans are spending money, but not as much as economists were expecting.
Retail sales rose 0.2%. Economists were predicting a 0.5% increase. Excluding autos, the increase was the same, 0.2%. Lower gas prices and moderating inflation may have allowed shoppers to control some spending. However, prices of most things are still much higher than a year ago, which is impacting spending choices. Ginny Cosola, Fox News.
A neighborhood in Florida overrun by domestic bunnies. Between 60 and 100 of the bunnies, called lionheads, have invaded the yards of the area of Wilton Manors in suburban Fort Lauderdale. Residents are trying to raise between $20,000 and $40,000 needed to rescue the animals and get them into homes. On Wall Street, the Dow added 366, the Nasdaq gained 108, the S&P plus 32. I'm Lisa Lacera. This is Fox News.
All right, we are ready once again for our Wednesday. Is it Wednesday? No, it's only Tuesday.
It's Tuesday.
I'm trying to get rid of the week here. It is time for 8 Oaks, and we are excited to have a couple of new guests. Jerrod, welcome. You're not the guest, but
Thank
welcome.
you. I am not the, I'm not the guest today.
You are my guest, so
Yes.
Thank you. And we're here with Jerry Geho and Wayne Bedford. Congratulations. Not congratulations, but thank you for coming. I'm just all been out of shape today. Sorry.
It's all good.
I thought we won something.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
You won a spot
You won a spot on the 8
on
Oaks.
WDXE 8 Oaks. So, Jerrod, take it away.
All right. Well, we're at the 8 Oaks show here this evening, and what we're here to do is talk about rehab and substance abuse issues facing our community. And at 8 Oaks, you can reach us at 8oaksrecovery.org. That's the number 8, and then spelled out oaksrecovery.org. Or you can reach us by phone at 931-560-4272. And we got a couple guests tonight. Wayne, he's actually been down to the facility, kind of checked it out, actually went out and did some marketing calls with us today. We went to some detox centers in Alabama and visited some different folks. I think most people in the community know Jerry Geho. He has a long history in the community of working in ministry and helping with homelessness issues and addiction issues in the community. We just wanted to have you guys come on. Maybe we start with Wayne a little bit, talk about your story, how you ended up. Nobody ends up volunteering and helping out at 8 Oaks by accident. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you ended up here today. What brought you here?
Well, I mean, obviously, God brought me here. Jesus brought me in line with you guys. I'm originally from California. And back home, I was outtake intake coordinator for Teen Challenge of Southern California as a volunteer, and so I was really plugged in, and I was really, obviously when you know your passion, you know what your calling is, you know why God has put you on this earth for, and it's tugging at you, you fulfill it, and so being in California, I mean, I was really plugged in. I was doing everything in my power and everything in God's will to go out there and just be that light and go out there and represent Him and go out there and get as many people I can. Help, due to my past experience with drugs and alcohol and where I was at. I was on the verge of being homeless 7.5 years ago. I'm actually clean and sober now for over 7 years. I don't drink, I don't chew, I don't smoke, I don't compromise. I give all my life to Jesus. But in my struggle, I was when I was at my bottom, when I was at my very bottom, I would pray and beg God, God, if you would just put me on solid ground, if you would just give me a normal life, I would give it all to you, and I'll do everything in the world to tell everybody it was you that did it, and I would dedicate my life to Him. Well, God did that. He pulled me up. He gave me put me on solid ground. He gave me a normal life. He gave me beyond a normal life. He gave me an amazing life. You know, and I went. My program I went to was a faith-based program in California. So I've tried rehab. I've tried different things, but it wasn't until I put Jesus in it. It wasn't until I put God in it. It wasn't until I took me out of it and started doing it, making it about Jesus and doing His way, that it all worked. You know, so when I got right, when I got sober, when I became all in, I devoted my life to sharing it with people and getting people off the streets and just going out there and be a fisherman, a men and women, and helping the lost and the struggling. So to fast forward now, when I moved to Tennessee, me as my role as a volunteer outside intake coordinator for Teen Challenge in Southern California, I kind of lost that role because I moved here to Lawrenceburg. God brought me here, and so since I've been here, man, I've just been really seeking doing people, like-minded, Christ-minded people who's out there, whose goal and their passion and their callings to go out there and help people in recovery. And in the process, it took a while because I didn't really know anybody at the time, but I just kept pushing forward and doing the Lord's work, going out there and doing as much ministry on the streets as I can. God brought these men in my life. God brought Jerrod in my life. God brought Brandon Taylor in my life, and that's how I ended up with these guys today. God finally, I felt like it's a very blessed to be finally connected with these guys. This is where my heart is. This is where my passion is, and I'm just very, you know, it's you meet a lot of people in your life, you know, and it's hard to find the ones who are really committed, who ain't about the money, who ain't about themselves, who's all about just going out there and representing Jesus, going out there and reaching the ones who are lost, you know, and so when I met these guys, I'm like, I got to spend the day with them, and I got to spend the night with him yesterday. Not overnight, but spent the evening with them.
In a tour at 8 Oaks is what
yeah,
I mean.
tour of 8 Oaks, and I seen what they represent, and I seen what they're about, and I seen their hearts. Had dinner with them, and spent the day with them today, the whole day from 7 o'clock this morning till right now. I'm like, this is the answered prayer for me. These are the people that I want to be part of. This is the organization. This is what I've been seeking, and I feel like God put me here today to be part of it, and just to have these people in my back pocket, and just to be part of it, just to go out and tell the world what they're doing, because they're doing some amazing things, and I'm very, very grateful for it.
Yeah, and at 8 Oaks, I mean, I know we talk about this. I mean, folks that have listened, just to give a little background, what 8 Oaks is it's a Christian drug rehab. And what makes us different than a lot of other rehabs is, you know, most Christian drug rehabs are 1 year in length, though they have work programs, and they're very focused on the biblical part, but they don't have a lot of clinical staff because just the structure of them. At 8 Oaks, the difference with us is we are still very biblically based, but we are state licensed, we're Geho accredited, we take health insurance, we have some state funding, and so we're different in that aspect, where most programs that take insurance are very secular based, and the philosophy of the therapist is very humanistic, which if you go to a program and you have any kind of biblical background, you know, if you come to a program like 8 Oaks, we can build on that, where a humanistic approach does not build on the values that a lot of folks in, you know, Tennessee, rural Tennessee especially, in northern Alabama would have. So that's what makes us different than most insurance-based programs, and we're also different than most Christian programs because we could do the more short-term thing. We can bill insurance, you know. Jerry, you've been out to the program and seen it and helped us with some things. And I know that you're just, you know, trying to, and this show just isn't about 8 Oaks. It's about addiction in the community. If you want to talk about just some of your thoughts on what's going on in the community, about interacting with 8 Oaks and stuff like that.
Well, I'm impressed with 8 Oaks. You know, of course, I've known David Morgan since he was a young boy. His father and mother were in ministry here when Bev and I came. And they were on the front lines reaching out to people, okay? And so
when you came here, all these trees were little bushes, right?
Yeah, yeah. Especially the ones in my yard. You know. But you know, so I saw them kind of grow up, and the Morgans, they're kind of like ministry blue blood in this county. But I know where they stand. I mean, when people talk about commitment, and you talk about David Morgan and his family, you know where their commitment is. So when 8 Oaks, and I know this has been quite a few years forming, because I had worked in some rehab avenues, and it's a monster to try to get done. People just don't realize what Morgan did in perseverance, because, I mean, I don't know how many times he got knocked down, had to get back up, but, you know, this was his vision God gave him, and when God puts that in a man's heart like he put it in David's heart, it's going to happen. And I'm really proud of him, because he has a ministry, not just as a pastor of a church, but of a county, as a county executive. But, you know, he doesn't have any loose time that he isn't investing in what God wants done. So when we talk about the involvement of people and 8 Oaks, there's a whole myriad of people out here that have no clue where to go or what to do to tie into it. I know as a pastor for years, you know, we have our daily grind. We have this has to happen, that has to happen, and we deal with these problems and this problems. Then we get broadsided by one of these addiction issues, which over the last 30 years has just exponentially exploded. It's not just 1 or 2 things that bring an addiction to the field. It's a whole group of things. What does the individual pastor do? Well, I'll tell you, I think 8 Oaks is the answer to that, because 8 Oaks can provide the support. I have seen personally 8 Oaks and Jerrod and David and these others go into action when somebody has a need now. I mean, you're talking about they're going to be, if they're serious, if they want to come out of that situation, they'll be in there before they know it. This isn't one try for 3 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever. Let's get it done. And that's something Lawrence County has never experienced. But it's there and it's real, folks. So, you know, to the pastors out there, I'm retired from that. I'm doing a lot of chaplaincy work. But I want to tell you, I really believe if we want to look at the dimension of homelessness and all the ramifications of that, I think 8 Oaks is going to be the final solution, because it is a plug-in.
I think it's a piece of the puzzle. I mean, the homeless issue, you know, there's mental illness involved, and obviously we have an escalating homeless issue in the city. And if people have substance abuse problems and we can get them help, and that's the thing with 8 Oaks. If somebody calls into 8 Oaks and we're not the right fit, we're going to find them someplace. We were, you know, I was talking earlier about there's a lot of Christian programs that are 1 year, you know, he was saying he went to Teen Challenge. If that's what somebody needs, if somebody needs a 1 year Christian program, we'll get them there. You know what I mean? Currently, 8 Oaks is only a male program. But if somebody has a female in their family that's struggling with addiction, we will help as a resource in the community to try to find the right place for them to go to. Because, you know, I've been working in addiction for 30 years now, and I've seen it different places in the country that I've lived and worked, you know, but you've been here in Lawrence County. I mean, you were minister of a large church, and you were chaplain at the sheriff's department for quite some time. Right. So you've seen the change in addiction over the years. What's really changed over the last 20, 30 years with addiction in this community?
It's younger, more inclusive of the entire family. There is less opportunity for a family to get help as a family. 36 years ago, we introduced a program for first-time offenders called Reality. And it's still going today. We just had a class Saturday. In this program, you confront people with things. And, you know, the family is where things have to happen. You know, I mean, we can have great programs like 8 Oaks, but at some point, what happens to the children in that family structure happens around that dinner table, happens within that home. And there's 2 kinds of thinking. One of them is concrete. That's where you draw a 3-foot circle around yourself, and it's I, me, now, want, it only affects me. Whereas abstract is say, boy, if I do this today, what's that going to cost me 6 years from now, 5 years from now? So our program basically took kids from becoming concrete thinkers for life and helped them begin to face consequences. I mean, yeah, they had to plan their funeral. They had to write last letters, okay? I actually delivered a number of letters throughout the United States for kids who went through the program and wrote the letter and were killed because of their negligence. And I would go to their family, and I would take the letters to them. The families have the impact on the final run. Whoever comes to 8 Oaks, at some point when they leave the not the control, but the environment, Bait Oaks, they're back around the dinner table, old friends, old family influences. And so that's why sometime in the next 90 days we'll be introducing Insights for Reality, where we've taken the program 7 or 8 things that really work for a mom and dad or grandparents to be able to put their kids through the paces. Think about this. What were you thinking? What's the consequences of this? What happens when you take this drug? What happens when you start vaping? What happens when you start smoking? What happens when you yield to that first alcohol drink? I know for a fact,
So where is that going to be available at?
It's going to be available here in Lawrence County or anywhere, really.
Okay.
It's just, I got some copyright issues on stuff that I've written that they said I got to make sure I got them secured. I'm going to offer it to the courts. But here, I'll just share a dream with you. I've got a place that's willing to let me use it at no charge. If a family will come, a mom and dad, grandparents, aunt and uncle, and they'll come and all sit around that table with me for 4 hours. It'll cost them $75. They'll get all their materials. And we'll take them through everything that they need to take their child through as a family in order to help them be able to develop a resistance to the influence that's coming at them. And as we get the parents on board, then we get the family on board. And what would happen in Lawrence County? I believe in God's grace. I mean, I didn't touch a drop of alcohol till I was legal age. And when I did, I was under the table. I was in my last year at Belmont University for ministry. And I went into my advisor and I said, I got a serious problem. He said, what's that? I said, I'm an alcoholic. And he just looked at me like, picked his drop off before he goes, you're kidding. I said, no, I hide it pretty well, don't I? He said, yeah, you do. You know what happened that day? He sat down and we talked for about a half hour. He laid his hands on me. He prayed for me. I walked out of there, not had a drop since. It's 1975.
Wow.
So when people talk about the difference, what will make 8 Oaks great and work is Jesus Christ.
Amen.
That's the giant leap.
It's the only way.
You can take 12 steps if you want, take the leap. Mm-hmm. Because wherever you leap and Jesus is there, you're going to come out of it on top. Mm-hmm. I got a cross that I have on a trailer. I really believe if you haven't been to the cross, you don't have any hope in eternity. Cut down a tree at the corner of my lot and turned it into a cross and put a sign on it. If people will come to the cross, if they'll come to Christ, there's a place for them at places like 8 Oaks. But Jesus Christ is what makes the difference at 8 Oaks.
Absolutely. And there actually has been some studies into that. I mean, obviously the mainstream media doesn't tout this, but addiction rehab that's in conjunction with biblical principles has a substantially higher success rate because that's what people are looking for. We've talked about this before. I've brought this up when I've been on the show before. The movie Jesus Revolution. I don't know who's had an opportunity to see it or not, but it's phenomenal. I think they actually made it. I know for one weekend or something. I think it was free, but if it isn't free, it's you can watch it streaming for $4 or something at home. But I went to the theaters to see it, and the movie was about a bunch of hippies, back in the 60s, and they were looking for something, and they went up to Haight-Ashbury, and they were dropping acid, smoking pot. They were looking for something, and they figured out that isn't what they were looking for. Mm. They went down to Orange County, got hooked up with it wasn't Greg Laurie, yeah, right. In Greg Laurie's church down there, and and they found what they were looking for, and hundreds and thousands of people got saved and got clean through Christ, and I can't promise that outcome to every person. I mean, you gotta want it, and you gotta be sincere in asking for it, but your chances of getting clean because human beings are looking for something, and we fill it with material stuff, we fill it with substance abuse, and until you find what you're really looking for, you're going to keep looking.
Right.
And so that's why addiction rehab, Christian biblical addiction rehab is more successful. And there is studies out there. Like I said, obviously you're not going to hear that on CNN, but I mean, there is stuff out there, and I invite people to look on the internet and, as we like to say, do your own research. But that is true, and so that stuff's available. Speaking of the family and speaking of the community, I spent, obviously, the last 2 days, I spent a bunch of time with Wayne. And, he said he moved here from California. And I know a lot of people from Lawrenceburg aren't thrilled about that, but this is the kind of guys we want here. And he was talking to me. He has some great opportunities in California. He took a serious hit to his income. And what he said is, what do you have, a 4-year-old boy?
He's 5 now.
He's 5 now. He said, hey, man, yeah, I can stay in California for 10 more years, make a lot of money, and be very comfortable, maybe not have to work again. But he says, you know what? How do I deprogram 10 years of that environment on my kid? And here's the thing. When it comes to addiction, when it comes to homelessness, this community isn't the same community it was 20 years ago. But we don't want to keep slipping and becoming he's not Southern California, you're Bakersfield. What is that, Central?
It's an hour and a half.
But what is that considered? Central California?
The Valley.
The Valley. Yeah. Not the Valley like the LA Valley. It's the actual. But anyway, the thing is, he came here, made financial sacrifices, but he says, hey, I'm rich living in Lawrence County, having a safe place for my kid. And that's exactly what you were talking about. You were talking about, and here's the thing, we can't let that slip away. No. We got to fight it on every front. Every homeless person, every kid vaping THC, vapes in the school, that's an assault on that lifestyle. And it's a slip to us ending up where a lot of these other states are already at, and we don't want to see that happen. And like I said, 8 Oaks is not the solution to every one of these problems. You know what I mean? Like, I can't tell you 8 Oaks is going to get every THC vape out of the school. And that's what this show's about. This show is not an hour-long advertisement for 8 Oaks. Like that, first off, would be very boring. I think Charlotte would eventually kick me off the radio. But we're here to talk about addiction problems. Like, hey, guys, I would love nothing more than there not to be any addiction problems left and us shut 8 Oaks down. Like, that'll be a happy day for me. Unfortunately, and in reality, I don't see that in the foreseeable future, but we need to fight on every front. We need to, like I said, if your kid, there's no kid in this community that's just smoking pot. I've answered, if I said I've answered 100,000 incoming addiction calls, I don't think I'd be lying, but I could definitely say tens of thousands. I've done this for 30 years. I've run some of the biggest call centers in the country. I've personally taken countless calls. And you don't know how many times I've heard parents say something to me like, well, I thought my kid was just smoking pot, and now he's using heroin. Well, here's the problem. Your kid isn't just smoking pot. He's warming up. And here's the other thing is, kids are always going to push the boundaries of what's okay. So if nothing's okay, and they smoke pot a couple times, you catch it, do something about it. I'll be honest, that ain't the end of the world. I'm not saying that's okay. I'm not saying that's okay at my house. But if you get aggressive about that and say, hey, this isn't okay. But here's the thing. If you tell your kid, hey, you know what? If you just smoke pot with your friends upstairs in your room, that's no big deal. That's not where it's going to end. You know what I mean? I mean, if you say, well, I'd rather my kids have a party in the barn at my house and be out drinking, dude, you're not thinking right. No. That's how you end up at 8 Oaks. Right. Because when that stuff's okay, they are going to push the boundary beyond where you set it. Mm-hmm. So if you go, drinking's okay if you do it at the house. Pot's okay if you do it at the house. They're going to use pills at school.
They're going to push it to the next level.
They're going to push it to the next level. And the other thing is, you're not going to be cognitive of it, because if you're used to seeing it at all, oh, they just smoke a little pot. No, a couple of their buddies brought some pills over. They're doing some fentanyl. And dude, this fentanyl, this stuff it's a different world, man. Because, one time you could be dead.
It's Russian roulette. That's what it is.
Every time. Every time it's Russian roulette.
And what people don't understand, the parents might not understand that weed's a gateway drug. It opens the doors. It gets you where you're like, you start compromising yourself, and lower you're compromising. So once you compromise with the weed, then that opens the door to other stuff, other substances, more drinking, more partying. And then if you're smoking weed, you might not be in your right mind, and then all of a sudden the next thing is offered to you, and there you are. Next you know, you're addicted to meth. So parents and families, man, you guys need to listen. If your kid's struggling, man, reach out to 8 Oaks. We might not be able to build, they might not be able to get them in the program, but we can come talk to you guys, man. We'll come sit down with the families. We'll come reach out and try to talk some sense into them and come beside you guys. And don't think you can do it on your own, because sometimes you can't, and you need other people. We're all the body of the Christ, and we all need to get together, rally together, and fix this problem with our community.
And the other thing we're seeing is with the kids, since we're on that subject, is, I'll tell you, there's convenience stores today. Parents don't understand, man. You go into a lot of these little convenience stores in town, and they got the Delta 8, the Delta 9, the Delta 10. That stuff is synthetic marijuana that, the other day I was on with the sheriff and Kip Capley, and we were talking about the new laws in the state. The lawmakers have a hard time keeping up with it. Mm-hmm. So the legislature can't write a bill that says anything that's mind-altering except for alcohol is illegal. They have to give a chemical compound for something to be illegal. So when they come up with a new Delta 8, Delta 9, Delta 10, Delta 10X, whatever, and they change the chemical makeup, this thing's been outlawed. Well, it takes time. It takes time to pass laws. It takes time for the folks' death to show up and the doctors to say, oh, this is what this is. And then they got to take it to the legislature, and the legislature got to pass legislation. The governor has to sign it. So what happens is these companies that are selling this poison to our kids, they stay one step ahead. Like as soon as something's banned, they already got 3 more variants that's the exact same thing, more or less, but like when they put it on that chemical test, it's not going to test positive for that because it's the next thing.
Right.
And so, if you're taking your kid into these stores and you think that, they're picking something up, you got to look at it. You got to look at what they're getting. And unfortunately, I tell you, most of that stuff is not supposed to be sold to anyone under 18 or 21. A lot of these small convenience stores, they're selling it to our kids. So, if your kid's out driving and the good news is kids are not that careful. They regularly throw stuff down. Like if you see a wrapper for some of this stuff, you got a problem. And here's the thing, you have a problem that's solvable. And if you call 8 Oaks, if you call your pastor, you know what I mean? Like if you go to a church and you call your pastor and say, hey man, I found this wrapper in my 17-year-old kid's car. What should I do? And hey man, they're going to tell you, oh, that isn't mine. I picked this friend up. I really don't know them that well. They threw it down. Dude, okay, first off, I'll tell you they're lying because I already know what the story is. But the thing is, you got to say, well, here's the deal. It was in your car. It's your responsibility. And if they see you're taking that seriously, though, I am not saying every time it's going to fix the problem, but at least you're not just running from it. And the consequences for this stuff with our kids is for real.
You're kind of hitting a sensitive subject here. I have an 18-year-old son who went to Lawrenceburg High School, and he got, I don't want to throw him on the bus right now, but he got not kicked out, but got in trouble a couple times for vaping at school, and me and my boy were really close, and I talked to him. I said, where are you getting this stuff at? And he named the stores. The little stores on the corner of our neighborhoods is where they're walking in there getting this stuff, and they're bringing it to the school. So I actually contacted the school and contacted the security at Lawrenceburg High School and sat down and talked to him multiple times. And he said, listen, 1 out of 3 kids in their high school is vaping in the bathrooms. 1 out of 3. But here's what it's doing. It's causing these kids to get this addict way of behavior, because now the stuff is so strong, parents, that they're getting addicted to it, and then they're stealing money, then they're hiding it. So now they're creating this addict habits, addict's way of behavior in high school. And so you guys, I'll just be sure, I'll be honest with you. You can buy nicotine tests online. You can buy them in bulk. Go buy it. go buy it, you know, and drug test your kids. I know they might not like it, but listen, man, make them accountable for it. Let them know, I told my boy, here's what we're doing. We're not doing it because we don't trust you, but we're making it easy for you to say no when you're out with those kids. So that's what we would do. He knows that he's going to get drug tested. So now instead of giving him the peer pressure, parents, you say, listen, we're doing this. So whenever you go out and they offer that stuff to you, you have a reason to tell your friends why you cannot do it. Because my parents are drug testing me. My parents are going to test me when I get home. Do it. Stand up. You know, fight for your families. You know, we all need to come together and rally together as a team. We all need each other. So that's what I recommend. It helps. It worked. And it prolonged some of the issues in my family. At least.
You said it, but exactly when you were telling that story, I was just gonna I was gonna wait till you were done, and I was gonna say you're giving them the out when it comes to peer pressure.
Right, exactly.
If you got the drug test and you drug test them, you go, hey, you know what? Hey, you know, I got two teenage girls. I got one that's 14, one that's 15, and in November they'll be 15 and 16. So I got one that's getting a driver's license. And dude, I'm gonna tell you what, like, if you drug test your kids, if you test them for nicotine, you're giving them the easy out with their friends. Like, if you have a good kid, and all of us, hey, everybody wants to be good. You know what I mean? But if your kid, you're giving them the easy out. They're out with their buddies. They're out with I was blessed. I don't know what I did, but I was blessed with all girls. Apparently, I must have played for patience at one time or understanding or something. Like, I got a wife and I got 2 girls at home and 1 out of the house. Like, it's me and all women, you know. So it is not. Anyway, like I said, I must have prayed for patience one time. That's a mistake. Do not pray for patience. God will teach it to you.
He'll show you patience.
He will teach you patience. So don't do it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so you know, I got these girls. And you know what? My older daughter, you know, she's my stepdaughter, and she actually goes to school. She goes to a private school in Nashville, and they actually randomly drug test everybody at the school. I know the public schools can't do that. Mm-hmm. Private schools can. Private schools could just go, hey, if you go here, we're going to drug test you. And here's the nice thing with that. She has the buyout. Because if she's out with people, say she's out with people from another school or people with her school, and they got a THC vape, and they're like, hey, man, try it. Everyone's doing it. She go, hey, man, you know what? It's been like a couple months since I got tested at school. My number's probably due to come up. You know what I mean? But it gives her, like, it gives her that excuse. Mm-hmm. And if they know they're getting drug tested either for a sport or at home, it gives them that buyout. So you're actually letting them have an easy way out by doing that, you know?
What Wayne was talking about was building boundaries. Mm-hmm. I was talking about insights. Mm-hmm. If parents have a plan that they can take their children through, and they can teach them boundaries that they develop for themselves and stand behind, and that's what Insights does. These are 7 things that have worked for over 30 years in a number of states that parents can now do to their children what we did in class. But when you're talking about building a boundary, Wayne, and building a reason for them to be held accountable, that's their safety net. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem is parents don't know how to do that.
Right.
That's why we're putting this together to glean from 30 years of work. Okay, folks, here it is. For your little boy and little girl in your family, or teenagers or grandkids, here's a way that you can take them through some processes. What would happen if a parent were to sit their child down and look and understand how some of these drugs can lead to their death or their disability, even worse? And they say, okay, now you got to plan what it is to have yourself taken care of for 60 days. Who's going to feed you? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? And they have to actually develop a living plan for the disability that they incurred by becoming disabled using a chemical. That makes them think. So the next time they're out with their friends and they say, I try some of this. No, man, because you got to have somebody do this to you and do that to you. And another thing, most parents don't know who their kids' friends are. Do you ever notice that?
Right.
One of these things we do on Insights, they can take a 30-minute exercise, and basically it's called progressive center of care, where you get into their mind a little bit. Who do you want in this situation to take care of you? We had one parent who looked at it and said, I don't know anybody on there. Well, you got a problem. Because if they're not coming to you for that intimate care, that close care, all the way out to occasional care, you don't know anybody, and they're putting names of people in there. The kid was in a gang in Colombia. They ended up having to move. And they had no idea their kid was into this.
Wow.
So,
Backgrounds are important.
you know, if we can provide that structure that they can learn in 3 to 4 hours, and then they can dish it out to their kids in living experiences that they stand behind and they've been through it, that'll bring it into the family realm. I believe that's what it's going to take.
Well, it sounds awesome. I look forward to when you get it rolled out and when you can talk about what location, how people can sign up. We'll have you back on because, like I said, here's the thing. Like my goal is to put 8X out of business. Like I'd love to see us get more early intervention, and because that's where it's all at. I mean, you know, I'm in recovery. Wayne's in recovery, and it's not great. You know what I mean? Like not having to get into recovery is much better than like, hey, we're all for helping. Like that's what 8 Oaks is for. 8 Oaks, there's a ton of people in addiction. We need to help them out. But the more we can get early intervention, it's less expensive to the community, to society as a whole. But it's also better for the person not to like those experiences. They made us who we are, and we gotta, you know, and we are who we are. But if you didn't have to go through those experiences, and we can save people from that, and that's another thing that we want to talk about with the kids is, you know, all the research says that your brain really isn't developed till you're 25, 26 years old. And I ran the second largest drug rehab in the country. We had 1,300 beds. We had tons of data. Like everybody got checked in on electronic medical records. And so if you wanted to run a report, I had one of the largest sample sizes in the country to look at because everything was on electronic medical records and you can run a report. The age of first use, and this is just isn't at my company. We looked at it at my company. I've read countless SAMHSA studies. SAMHSA is the federal government wing that spends millions, hundreds of millions a year on research on addiction. Age of first use of people that end up in drug rehab. It's 13, it's 13, it's 13, it's 13, it's 13. Like, that is the average age of use. You go to a drug rehab and you look at age of first use, 12, 13, 14. Like, people that have their first exposure to alcohol or to marijuana or to even harder substances in their 20s, their chance of becoming addicted is astronomically lower. I am not advocating if you're 25 and you've never drank, good job, keep rolling. But if you take that same brain and you give that 15-year-old brain alcohol, their prefrontal cortex is not developed, so they don't rationalize that the next one wasn't better than the first one. And it actually creates pathways of addiction. So delaying that first use is critical. Like, if nobody in this country drank or used drugs, quite frankly, I know the legal age is 21, but if everybody waited until they were 18, addiction rates would drop. I'm just going to tell you, I've seen the data. I've looked through the data. 13 is where it always ends up. I'm not going to say I had clients that their age of first use was 9. You know, I mean, I've had clients that used heroin when they were 9 years old. I mean, there's tragic stories out there. And I've had clients that were, you know, like you said, you didn't drink but you lived a short season of it. If your first use would have been 13, I don't know if you would have got out of it as quickly and easy as you did. You know what I mean? Like, you went down a bad path. You were 21 at the age of first use from what you...
Because it's 18.
18. Okay, so you were 18 at the age of first use, and like you sat there and said, hey, man, I got a problem. Well, you didn't build those pathways when you were a kid. You know what I mean? And so I am telling you, keeping your kids away from... And the other thing I also want to say is, we were talking about the vapes, talking about the nicotine test. If your kid's vaping, I am going to tell you, there is a 90% plus chance they're smoking weed. And that's the thing, like, you can be walking through the square, you can be walking through Walmart, and you see somebody taking a hit off a vape, and unless it says Joel on the side, and it's one that they're putting a liquid in, or doing their own, like, can mix the stuff up or buy stuff, they're getting the THC. They're getting the THC, like, unless it's the prepackaged stuff that, Philip Morris is selling. And I'm not advocating vaping at all, but I'm just saying, like, if you see your kid and your 15, 16, 13-year-old has a vape pen, they are getting THC vapes. Like, that's what they're going for. And a lot of folks, like I said, you can see a guy walking through Walmart's parking lot and he takes a hit off a vape. It doesn't smell different.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like us old guys, we go, oh man, I can smell weed a mile away. I can if it's weed. But if it's synthetic THC mixed in with cherry lollipop, Now the other day, I will tell you, I was down at Opryland, and my kids, we were at Dave & Buster's, and my kids were in there. We did the family bowling thing, and my kids wanted to go play the games. And I do have to admit, I do smoke cigars. So I said to my wife, I said, like, I don't want to sit there in Dave & Buster's, ding, ding, ding. So I said, I'm going to go outside and smoke a cigar. So I went out there, and I got the strongest whiff of marijuana that I've probably smelled in like 5 years. And it was kind of funny. I kind of walked around the corner, and I saw a guy standing in another doorway. He was sitting there actually smoking a joint. But in today's world, the number one way that people are taking marijuana is edibles. Mm-hmm. They're buying the gummy bears, And then the vapes is right behind that, and actually smoking weed is rare, right. From what I understand. It's not that common. So, like I said, if you see your kid with one of these vape pens, man, you need to be very cognizant of what's going on. And that age of first use, if they're 13 years old doing that, they are setting themselves up for a rough time with addiction.
Something that people like to overlook because it's not comfortable to talk about, but this vaping, weed, that's a spiritual issue. We're talking about demonic possession. Demons are involved in this thing. You say Jerry Geho's nuts? No, I've been there and seen what goes on. I've seen it come down, okay? They are there. And if your kids are doing this, guess who's egging them on?
You know what I mean?
It's Satan's out to get your kids. He wants your kids.
You can attack your household first.
Exactly. But,
this is the drug rehab show, but there's a lot of places where in this society, I'm not going to get into the other ones. We're just talking about drugs today, but there's a lot of things in our society today that Satan is coming for our kids.
Oh, yes. Yes.
We'll save that for tomorrow night on a Republican show.
Yeah. I'm serious. People want the best for their kids. We want to give our kids what we didn't have. That's our first mistake, okay? What they need is they need to go through some of the things that we did. And, when it gets down to grandchildren, what do we want for our grandchildren? Well, I guarantee you this, they're in a cultural upheaval right now in schools, in social activities, social media, and Satan and the demonic influences are just corralling them around. But nobody will own up to that. And I want to tell you something. If you are doing something, in your heart whether God would honor it or not. And I'll tell you something. People say, why are you so passionate about juvenile and teen alcohol? I'll tell you why, because I know what that monster on your back is. I know what it's like to have a goal set in ministry and look at that and say, I'm going to be defeated, and then find out that Satan just had his thumb on me. And you know what? We need to own up and say, we got a problem. I got a problem with my kids. If my kids are doing something, then don't underestimate Satan. He wants your kid. And if you got to come through your lack of character to get him, they'll do it. So don't let him come through you to get to your kids. You stand there, because the demons can go. Christ promised that. When I look at kids now and I see people in some pretty sad situations, you know what I say? But by the grace of God, there's Jerry Geho. I know where my security is. It's at the cross. It's with Christ. And there isn't anything that can put me down unless I give in. And that's where our society's at right now. Too many people giving in. Too many people settling for second best. Man, listen, we need to see some champions for Christ stand up and say, enough with the demons, and call it for what it is. So, amen. I won't preach.
Oh no, man! Hey, hey, we're talking Christian drug rehab, Jerry.
Yeah.
You're right on point, man.
That's why I'm so excited.
But
about
it is. I mean, there is. Hey, all addiction, man. I mean, all addiction. Like we've all been there to some degree. SAMHSA, also cites that 100% of people in America are negatively affected in their life by addiction. So either your wife, your brother, your sister, your husband, your spouse, a coworker that constantly calls in sick, and you got to pick up the slack. But SAMHSA says that 100% of people in America are negatively affected by addiction. That's how powerful it is.
Oh, it is.
It is, and it is demonic. I mean, because people in addiction, man, I tell you, like I said, I've worked in addiction for 30 years, and dude, stories that you hear, the things people do that they never thought they would do. And in retrospect, once they're out of the addiction, they can't believe they did. In the pursuit of getting drugs, it's endless. Like, I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to get graphic on this, but you can use your imagination, and it is. It's an entry. It's demonic itself, but it's truly a point into a demonic lifestyle. You know what I mean? Like not caring about, trying to follow the tenets of the 10 Commandments. Like none of that stuff matters to you anymore. The only thing that matters to you is the getting and using of more drugs. And it really does. It's very powerful over people, and people do, unspeakable things. And we're not going to speak of them tonight, but they are unspeakable things,
Well, your passions change. It changed.
Well, you only got one.
Yeah.
You got one passion. Getting and using, people steal, people cheat, people lie, just people that, aren't equipped to do that before, but the addiction will take them there very quickly.
Yeah, they throw their values out the window and they put the drug first. So.
And people, you end up in jail, you end up in hospitals, you end up in drug rehabs, and it's not a pleasant route to go at all.
What happened to the days when a child would be in school and their friend would do something and they'd say, you don't need to do that, and they'd come home and tell you, Dad, this person's doing this. I don't hear that happening much anymore. It used to happen. But whenever they've been programmed to accept all this stuff, I mean, they don't even know which bathroom to go to. How in the world are they going to know what's dangerous?
Yeah.
They just don't know. They're not programmed for self-preservation. They're sitting ducks. Mom and dad are God's warriors for their kids. They better get up and get armed.
Right.
And I'm going to do my part. But they got to come to the meetings. They got to come put the time in. And I'm wondering myself, if what God has me setting out to do doesn't work, it's not because it isn't good, because we've seen it work for 30 years. It's going to be that people just don't care enough about their kids. That's a sad state of America. But I'm afraid that that's probably on the horizon for more people than we want to admit.
Well, they think that they're, by letting them do everything or not disciplining them, that isn't love. Like, showing discipline, having boundaries is love. You know what I mean? Like, letting the kids run wild is not a caring thing to do.
Well, my kids were never my friends in the respect to, I wanted them to like me as a friend. They're going to respect me as dad because I love them with all my heart. I'll give my life to protect them. But until that is a relationship that you have, that kid's going to end up anywhere. If that kid doesn't know that you'll take it for him, you'll take a bullet for him, whatever it might be, they don't know where they stand. Boundaries, building boundaries like Wayne started out talking about. Build those boundaries in there, then you've got these warning signals. You've got somewhere for them to go. You build in reasons for them to say no, And that's what it's going to take, Mom and Dad. Bring it home, folks. Bring it home.
Yeah. And let's see, we got a few minutes left here. I'm going to give the phone number one more time. If somebody out there needs help with addiction, 8 Oaks phone number is 931-560-4272, and our website is 8oaksrecovery.org. That's the number 8, and the rest is spelled out, oaksrecovery.org. And if you have any questions about addiction stuff that's going on, if anyone has any Facebook questions, they kind of.
What about if they just have any questions in general? Do you guys offer any kind of counseling services, or if they just got questions, can they call and
If
get
somebody
information?
has a question, we would call. If they needed a counselor or something, we'd try to find them help. We also do outpatient services at 8 Oaks. So, yeah, if somebody has a question, give us a call. We try. I mean, we're not just here to run a drug rehab. We are here to help folks get solutions.
That was my question.
Yeah.
Like, you can point somebody in the right direction.
Yeah. We're happy to answer addiction questions. Like, if you have like a question about the weather, call Charlotte.
That's not
And
what I meant.
I got you. You want me to give your phone number out to everybody?
Yeah, please.
Weather questions. You just had to get a laugh out there,
I
didn't
did.
you? Okay.
Yeah, please.
All right.
We still need that at the beginning
You
of your
need a
show.
soundtrack? Well, you
Yeah,
just got it.
I know. So,
You know, what I've noticed the last couple of days spending time with Jerrod here and time with some of the other 8 Oak people behind the scenes is that they're not about just building up 8 Oak. If someone has a problem and they can't help, they got a list of people. They got, I don't know how many other organizations they have in their back pocket that they can make a phone call right there and get your kid in somewhere. If they don't got the money, they'll get you in a place that's free. They're not all about just me. Let's build 8 Oaks. They're about just trying to restore this community and help the lost. So listen, you think that, just listen, just call them up, you know? There's a lot of people, a lot of friends, a lot of people involved that are in this that just want to help you, help your family, help this community, and help the streets. So just give them a call, you know? If you feel something tugging on your heart, just do it. Call them up. You know, and just you have nothing to lose, but only gain, you know. And like I said, I've been a part of a lot of things. I'm from California. I've seen a lot of people, a lot of different ministries, and been a part of a lot of beautiful things, man. And what they got going on here is very beautiful. It's very encouraging. It's very inspiring, man. So I encourage you, man, do it for your family. Make that phone call. Do it for your kids. Listen, man. Listen, if you have any doubt or any thought or something put it in your mind that your kid might be using, just go get that drug test.
now, Wayne, something you said earlier,
Yes, ma'am.
and I didn't interrupt you, but which I normally am very good at. I want to take this one step further. You know, the vaping in the bathroom. You know, we all grew up where we just smoked in the bath. I never did,
Right.
but smoking in the bathroom.
For a friend, you had friends that did that.
Listen, I'm serious. I never smoked, and I've never done.
I had friends that smoked.
And
in
I
the bathroom.
never did any kind of drugs. I mean, God has very much protected me from that. But you were talking about 1 in 3 kids vape.
Alcohol's
Right,
alcohol's a drug.
Okay, thank you. You have corrected me. I do drink. But these kids that are vaping, even though parents don't find vapes,
Right.
they're selling vapes in the bathroom.
school.
They're selling hits on vapes.
You're
Like,
100% correct.
Really?
They're selling,
Yes.
like, if one kid has a vape, they're taking turns vaping. Instead of bumming cigarettes off each other, they sell hits off
They
vapes.
do. There's actually vape dealers in high school that my son told me all
Right.
about it. He broke it down to me.
But the difference is, I'm gonna make a point
Yeah.
real quick. Hang with me. The difference is where people bummed cigarettes. Normally, one kid won't die from smoking a cigarette. Where the vapes, now that they're unregulated, kids can now take hits off vapes and die of a heart attack because they're unregulated. There's different amounts of THP,
strong. Yeah, right.
and now you're risking your life of taking a hits off THP vapes.
Right, you nailed it. You're
And
100%
with the
correct.
Delta 8.
And that's where
So there's a much stronger problem with these kids taking vapes than there was where we as parents, I have 4 kids, but I mean, they're grown, but there's a much stronger problem with these kids who, even though they don't necessarily have the vapes on them, of each kid taking hits off each other's vapes than there was when we were growing up, where they were just bumming cigarettes off each other and smoking in the bathroom.
Right, you know, and it's an epidemic.
Right.
It's an epidemic, and that might be an understatement calling it an
I
epidemic.
think it is an understatement.
It is.
I mean, the high school was so bad that they were taking the doors off the bathroom stalls this
Right.
couple of years so that they couldn't hide behind the
So
bathroom
what
doors.
they're doing is now they're just sharing it.
Right.
Like your kid, your son and your daughter might not have them at their house, but they don't need it. They'll have it at the school. And their group of friends, they'll just sit there and they'll meet in the bathrooms and they'll just be taking hit after hit of this really potent stuff and just becoming just addicts. So when you see your kid might be acting a little different, probably because he's coming down off the stuff at home, you know. So I encourage every parent who's listening to this, just get a drug test. Just try it. Your kids might be mad at you, might be upset, but listen, you're saving their lives. Your kids need you to be accountable for them. They need you to make
And I'm going to
boundaries
ask
for
a
'em.
question. I'm going to make myself not look like the expert because I don't know the answer to this. Can you drug test for Delta 8 or Delta 10? Like, will that come up?
I was told you cannot. Because
Okay,
I asked my son.
That's what I thought.
I don't know either.
It might be under the radar.
I should know that answer, but this stuff's emerging.
They're really smart about what these
Why
liquors.
why could you not get a Delta 8 test?
Because it's not.
It's a different kind of substance.
It's a synthetic THC. It's not. It has the effect of THC on your brain, but it's not THC. So what you actually test for in drug tests, from my understanding, but I did own a drug.
All right,
testing
we
lab.
got 30 seconds, Jerrod.
You test for the chemicals your body makes from it, and if it's a different chemical, your body's gonna
You
make
need to
different stuff.
invent one. Here we go.
Let's go.
Let's look into it, right?
All right, guys. Well, reach out to 8 Oaks Recovery Center. And Jerrod, got that number one more time?
931-560-4272.
And great show, guys. And we look forward to having you back here on WDXE Talk Radio. And we look forward to hearing more from you guys and success stories.
There you go.
Yeah.
Praise reports,
And
right?
Your praise reports.
yes, praise reports. That is a great.
This is WDXE.
Praise reports alone if you want to have that here. That's how the things I've been witnessing with 8 Oaks. So they can do a whole session on that.
Awesome.
Back here on the show. How you doing?
By the way, Oliphant.
Live from the Rich Eisen Show studio in Los Angeles.
And by the way, just drop the Timothy. Just go with Tim, and maybe it makes it easier.
Tim.
The Rich Eisen Show.
Oliphant.
We're not that close. Go back to Timothy.
Today's guests: Pro Football Hall of Famer Marshall Faulk, senior writer